In the last video, we looked at a frequency table and a relative frequency table, both as a way to summarize a qualitative variable. So we have a variable, the state in which the customer lives, and the customer lived in one of four states, and we figured out how to build this frequency table by basically summing up or adding up or counting up how many customers live in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and etc. So this is a good way to display this data in a table form, but sometimes we want a more visual way to showcase the data. And so there's a natural connection here between the frequency table and the visualization of a bar chart, and the relative frequency table, and both a bar chart and a pie chart. So we'll turn to those next, but really we just take the information here and we plot it on a pair of axes. So we'll just flip back and forth a little bit, and all we're doing here is we're going to build it on an axis here, and it's we're going to put our class along the x-axis, and so, or our classes, I should say, and so that is the Minnesota, Wisconsin, what did we have, Iowa, and North Dakota. Now, it's entirely feasible and reasonable to put the classes along the y-axis if it visually makes sense. The standard bar chart starts in this form, but you will see them laid out kind of with the bar horizontal. So in this case, though, what we'll do on the y-axis is then do number of customers. Okay, and so this is simply going to just be visualizing the frequency table from before. And so if my memory serves me, we had 11. So obviously this is easier in on a computer where you have these built in, but so 11 would stretch us somewhere to here, and it's a simple, just a bar showing the height. And so what's helpful with a bar chart is that we can quickly, our eyes are very good at noticing differences between sizes of things, right? And so yes, we can scan through a table, and maybe that's not so bad in our recent in the frequency table working with here, where there's just 4 numbers. But when we start expanding beyond the simple 4 class case, it becomes more difficult to even take in these summary statistics. And I think these both were at 6. So if I've drawn this roughly to scale, our eyes are much better equipped to notice, oh, these 3 kind of look the same, and we have Minnesota with a lot more than the other 3, and we can kind of get a quick feel for the data that way. So that's really the benefit of the bar chart, is that it's a summary of the summary. So if we jump back here, yes, all that data is contained in here, and it's much better to absorb than just looking at the 30 observations. And frequency tables have a lot of use, but if you do want an even quicker way to grab the data, this is often a good method. Now, this is a bar chart based off of the frequency table. We can also build a bar chart off of the relative frequency table, and that's going to look, well, it's going to look almost identical. The only thing that's going to change is what goes along the y-axis. So again, so it'll be state, and I probably should have labeled the last one, but we'd still have Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and North Dakota. And alternatively, over here we're going to have we'll have something like relative frequency. and we may even put it as a percent. We might label it as percent. Let me just put that up there. And in that case, now I am going to need to remind myself of what those were. So up here at, this is now no longer 11. It's going to be, I didn't leave myself very good space, but it's going to be 0.366. I think that was what the last one was. Yeah. So that is the relative frequency. There's 30, and I did put this as percentage, so I take that back. That's going to be 36%. 36.6%, right? And so we might not have a spot right at that. We might, so 30, 20, 10, right? And label these as percentages. And I didn't space that out very well, but that should be 40 up there. And then, so this would intersect at about 36%. These last two were right at 20%. And Wisconsin was what, 22 something or 23 something. Okay, so 23. Okay, so let me reiterate, and I didn't draw this very well. The difference between these should look the same relative to each other, right? All we've done is divide the values by the total observations, and so the shape of this, and I really did not do this well. So this difference should be a little bit more probably, right? So that's what I'm talking about, that these two should look like they're slightly more than the Iowa and North Dakota. We should be able to visually pick that out probably. And so a bar chart, again, is taking the frequency table or the relative frequency table and presenting it visually. We'll talk about some of the tips as far as when we're designing these in a program like Excel. How do we want it to actually look? Obviously, we don't want it to be hand scribbled and unable to read some things like I have here. But then we'll also talk about, okay, how the spacing between these bars. There's some literature that design literature that gets at what's easiest for the eyes to pick up and so on. And so there's kind of some tips and tricks that we'll briefly talk about. So if you ever are in the position where you want to build some of these, you'll at least know a few of the basics. Yeah. So the other thing that goes along with frequency tables and more specifically relative frequency tables is the pie chart. And you are all familiar with pie charts, but it's really taking that same data and putting it in another visual form. And there are certain cases where a pie chart might work better than a bar chart and vice versa. And we can talk more about that, especially when we turn to the some of those tips about how to design them. And this actually may be a case where a pie chart is warranted. I'm trying to switch pages here. But all we're doing is taking specifically this data, the relative frequency data, and building it into a pie chart. What is that? Okay. So this is not popping up, so we'll come back with another video on pie charts.